Welcome to the Dose of Good podcast, where we celebrate good people and organizations working to make the world a better place. It can be easy to get caught up in the bad things going on in the world and forget about the good happening all around us each and every day. I'm your host, Erin, and I want to share these stories with you and give them the attention they deserve. I hope this podcast educates and inspires you and maybe even motivates you to share a dose of good in your community. Now let's get into today's episode. For today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Londonderry Child Passenger Safety Program, but more importantly about certified car seat technicians, how important it is to get your car seat checked, and how you can go about finding where to do that in your community. But it's a great service that is offered, and I highly recommend you do if you have a child in a car seat to make sure that the car seat is installed properly, the child is in the car seat properly, and they are going to be safe on the road. So if you have not done this, I hope that you will take note of today's episode and make sure that you go and add this to your to-do list and get it done. I also want to let you know that I am not quite myself today. I do have allergy issues going on, which are making me kind of stuffy and have a little bit of a scratchy throat, so I may not sound as clear as I normally do, but hopefully it won't be too much of an issue for you, and I don't do most of the talking anyway, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. So now let's get into it. So today I'm here with Vinny Curro, call lieutenant with Londonderry Fire Rescue, certified car seat technician and co-founder of the Londonderry Child Passenger Safety Program. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Erin, thanks for having us. This is awesome. We get to spread the word about our program, and hopefully more people take advantage of it.
Definitely. So can you tell me what a certified car seat technician is and kind of what that entails?
Absolutely. It was a 32-hour class. We've got it down to, you can, depending on what state or whoever's in charge, the lead instructor, it can be a 4-day class, or we can do it in 3 days now. And it's a nationally certified program. It's through Safe Kids USA, which is also the National Safety Council and the Child Passenger Safety Board. Are all national organizations, and all have created the curriculum that all the child passenger safety technicians in the country use. So if you go to California or New Hampshire, we all have the same training. We all use the same identical form, so we're all checking the same and similar items on all our inspections.
Okay, so it's pretty much countrywide then, not differing by state kind of thing.
No, it's a national program. AAA, NHTSA, which is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Safe Kids USA, National Safety Council, and the CPSboard.org have all joined forces now. There's a new curriculum actually will come out next year, so every 4 to 5 years they try to update the curriculum because there's so many changes now in car seats and the vehicles that we put them in. And you become a certified technician. Every 2 years we need to recertify, just like our EMT at the fire station. And that requires certain things as well from an instructor. So you need to keep up on what's going on. There's so many changes.
So why should someone get their car seat inspected, and typically how often should they do that?
So why is a great question. Right now, and I don't have all my numbers entered from when we started the program, but we're at roughly 92% of all car seats that we do check, that people come in. We find some kind of, not an issue, but we find something that we can correct. And when we correct something, we're hopefully making that child safer riding while in the car. Our goal is that, and every car seat technician, child passenger safety technician across the country will tell you the same thing, is that our goal is to make the child safer when they leave than when they arrived. And it might be something as simple as taking it from an outboard position, like the right side or the left side of the car, and showing the parents or the caregivers how to put the seat in the center of the car. We know that the center seat is safest. So just that one thing that we correct can go a long way if there, God forbid, there was a crash in making the child safe. As much as new parents, grandparents, can do their homework and look online and whatnot, it's difficult to find all the information you need to make sure that your car seat fits your car properly and is safer. So that's our goal, right? So that every 2 years I told you we recertify. It requires that we do so much education, and this is all keeping up on new seats that are out on the market, new vehicles, and what changes there are in the market. So, people say to me, "Well, okay, so it moved a little bit more than what you like. How bad is that?" But what we say is, so one of the things that we do is force equals mass times speed. So when a crash, that car seat and the child in it are going to exert a certain amount of force. If it's just a small little minor fender bender, that's not such a bad thing. But that small little extra, say it moves a couple inches from side to side as opposed to less than an inch, in a crash at 40 or 50 miles an hour with a 10 or a 12 or whatever pound child, that's going to exert an awful lot of force on the child that the child shouldn't. And whether or not they can withstand those forces, but they shouldn't do that. So that's why it's important to get it checked out. A lot of the hospitals will recommend, like when you do your childbirthing classes, they'll recommend that you contact a local, and it could be everybody. Like a lot of people think that every fire station in the country does it, but it all depends on what town you're in. And some towns it's just the police department, and sometimes it's just the fire department, and sometimes it's a combination. So you can go on Safe Kids USA. And there's a list of all the inspection stations in the entire country. In New Hampshire, our website is beseatsafenh.org. So beseatsafenh.org. And that'll list out all the inspection stations throughout New Hampshire, all the contacts, and it also has a calendar as to all the upcoming events throughout the entire state. So if someone's interested in getting their car seat checked and they don't live near Londonderry, because here we are doing this broadcast in Londonderry, they can find a station closer to them.
Oh, that's great. I was going to ask you about that.
There
So
you
that's
go.
great that
Yeah,
you let them
yeah.
know that. And what made you want to get involved with this and then decide to start the Londonderry branch, I guess you would say?
Yeah. So as part of when I was a call firefighter many years ago, we'd do our open house in October for National Fire Prevention Week. One of the things that we did is I had contacted the local Safe Kids organization, and they are out of the Injury Prevention Center up at Dartmouth Hitchcock up in Lebanon. And we would get some fire safety items, and we would teach the kids during open house. So one day I had my son with me. He was, I don't know, maybe 3. And we had heard on the radio about a public event that was taking place up in Manchester, and we were driving around in my truck. So I said, "Wow, we're going to be right down the street. Let's go see what it's about." And we went and it was an hour wait because there was so many people in line. But we waited, and they found like 3 things wrong. So here I was thinking that I had read all the information and studied up on it and everything, and they found like 3 things that could make my son safer. At the time, my wife was watching one of our friends' daughters. So I called her up and I said, "Hey, get dressed and ready to go. We're going to take your car up." And we found like 2 or 3 things wrong with that car seat as well. So when we were talking up there at the event, it happened to be that the person I'd been dealing with from Safe Kids on the fire safety stuff was also in charge of the car seat safety stuff. So we talked a little bit, and I got involved, and it took me at the time, and it's still even difficult now to sometimes get in to take a class to be certified, but it took me 4 tries, classes that they were holding because they were filling up so fast. It took me 4 tries to get into a class that had availability. I lucked out in that in the class up in Hooksett was Brad Warrener, and at the time he was our school resource officer here in town. So him and I got to talk during class and, at break time, and we said, well, let's work together and what we could do. So we worked together to start the program. We had I had visited a couple of the fire stations and police stations around the area that had programs and helped them out. They have an event, and so we would, kind of networking and see how they ran their program and what they did. So Brad and I worked together, and we both got permission from our chiefs, and we started the program in town. So I've been a technician, and Brad was in the same class. It was May of 2000, and we started the class. We started the program officially in May of 2001. So we've been going for 23 years now, and we're just under 3,000 car seats inspected in 23 years.
That's great. And I don't want this to sound negative, but
Yeah.
I hope that it's even more because there's definitely so many more
Yeah,
cars.
yeah,
So hopefully
you
this
learned yourself, right? How many different things
right.
that you could read the owner's manual,
Yeah.
but there's just certain things that aren't in that manual or, aren't online in order to give you that little extra, to make sure that your child's safe. So,
Sure. Well, that's why I wanted to have you on too, because I think there's a lot of people that aren't even aware that this is available to them, and it's such a helpful thing, especially for new parents. They've got so many things to think
yeah,
about, and so
exactly.
this kind of just helps them out with one of the things, makes it easier.
Exactly.
So,
A few years ago, I got an email from one of the town councilors, and he was contacted by a citizen who went up to Station 1, Fire Station 1 up on Grenierfield Road, and was surprised that there wasn't somebody just sitting there waiting to check their car seat. And he emailed me and said, well, I have no idea that, like, what you do or where you do it or that it even existed until you'd called over to the fire station and to get a hold of us. And I said, well, it's on the website. We have, I don't know what else, how else do we get the word out, So, a program like this is fantastic. It's awesome. So,
yeah, well, thank you. What other safety tips would you give to parents with young children, babies, toddlers, whatever it may be, or I guess anyone that would be in a car seat?
yeah.
Are there any other safety tips you would give them for traveling in a car?
Oh, absolutely. And that's part of what we do, right? So, when you came down. So, our inspections, and I say we have like 3 steps, right? So, a person comes in and they have their car seat installed, right? So, we make an appointment. So, we do all our inspections by appointment. That way, we know that our technician is dedicated to that person. They're not waiting. They're not, like I said, when I went up to Manchester for that public event, it was an hour wait. And a lot of people don't want to wait an hour or can't wait an hour. So what we do is we have an email and we have a phone number, and we'll go over that. But we make an appointment, and we basically say that we give 1 hour per seat for a technician to complete. So we inspect the seat the way it arrived and whether the child's in it or they're expecting, right? And we'll take a look at that. We'll go over the installation. We'll go over putting the child in the car seat and go over all the features of the car seat. Then we'll put the car seat in the car, and we may make some recommendations. Like if it showed up on the right side of the car or the left side of the car, we make a recommendation to move it to the middle if we can. And those we all talk about, right? We will always strive to make that child safer, but there could be a medical reason why we can't, but that's what we talk about. And then I do what I call our storehouse of useless information. And on our check form, I think there's 15 different points that we talk about. And so to get to your question, long wind is we are in the middle of heat wave. As of yesterday, 9 children have died in the United States being left in hot cars. So the big thing that we're stressing right now is that you always check the back seat before you lock it. And I say to the new parents, especially as you are now a parent, whether you have the baby yet or not, you're a parent, and you need to, every time you get out of the car, check the back seat. What we're finding is 3 things that are happening. One is that a child is being left in the car just because we're all busy, right? We are all nice people. We have our thing to do, and something changed, and we got out of our routine, right? The other one is that people leave their cars unlocked while in their driveways, and a child from next door, or maybe even your own child, they'll be playing out in the yard with their friends, and maybe they're playing hide and go seek, or they're just whatever, and they get into the car, and either the car gets locked behind them and they don't know how to unlock it, or they don't know how to get themselves out or can't, and the car's overheating, right? And then the third one is that we just sometimes just forget. So it's very important that, our numbers at 9 are that's, one's way too many. We're better than last year, but the numbers, like in the last week, have doubled in 1 week since we had from January to last week, because
Yeah.
there's so many states experiencing the heat, right?
Right.
So that's the biggest thing. Another one is that if you have, grandparents or a next door neighbor that is going to be watching your child, come in as well. About a third of the seats we're doing right now, give or take approximately, is expecting parents or someone who just had the baby. About a third of grandparents, right? We have a lot of 55 and over communities in Londonderry. Why are they here? They're here because their sons or daughters are in town. They want to be near the grandchildren and their own children, so they're watching the children. Most of the grandparents did not have any type of car seat, let alone any type of a complicated, or more safer car seat like what we have on the market now. They don't have a clue. They look at it, like it's something they've never seen before. So we're seeing about a third of the inspections are grandparents, and then a third they'll go from that rear facing only seat to like the convertible seat, or they'll go forward facing. About a third of that. I'm afraid, like, we don't see as many, in my opinion, we don't see as many when they transition from the rear facing only seat, like the bucket seat they call it, or the carrier, to that convertible seat. We don't see many of those, and I'm either we're doing a really good job educating the parents and the caregivers when they come in for the infant seat, and they're installing them properly and we're all good, or they're not, and they're not coming in because either they don't think they need to, or they may be embarrassed because they're not sure if it's correct or not, and they don't want us to see it, kind of a thing. But that rear-facing convertible seat can be difficult at times, especially to get it as tight as we need it to. Our test is that you can't move the seat side to side, front to back, more than an inch. And an inch is an inch. It's not, well, it's close, right? So I hope that it's the first one, that we're doing a good job educating. People say to me, why does it take an hour to go through the car seat? You can put it in like in 2 minutes. And it's like, great, I can. I can put any car seat in 5 minutes and you can leave, but you need to be educated on how to do it. So if you need to take it out, or if you need to move it, how to put it in right again. So,
Yes, definitely.
yeah.
And I don't know, and I know not everyone thinks the same way, but for me, it would just, even if I think I did it perfectly correct, when I have to change from the infant seat to the bigger seat,
Yeah.
what's the harm in just getting it checked
Yeah,
anyway? And then you just
exactly.
have that peace of mind of, okay, it's all good, and,
Right. Yeah.
I've done it correctly
Yeah.
and everything. So.
And that's not just us in Londonderry. It's in a lot of the stations. Now we use a digital form, so it's easier to get the information more detailed information than when we, had a piece of paper and we submitted it in, and then somebody else had to enter it in. So those figures are coming, and we're working on that's through the National Safety Council. They've done a fantastic job. So that form is good. Now that it's digitized, we're able to extrapolate some more and different information. So that's what we're working on statewide and nationwide is what are we seeing for misuse? Is there a trend? Is there, say one town and, every seat that comes in, the rear facing only seats forward facing, or, something like that. And we can see that now in these forums, which is nice. The other thing that's nice about the digital form is the information also goes to the vehicle manufacturers. And there's a section on there that says, was it basically, was it an easy install for this vehicle? And you can say yes or no. And if it's no, why? And that information will go to the car manufacturers, the vehicle manufacturers, and say, well, okay, is it an angle issue? Is it where we put the lower anchors? Is, what's the problem? So
Okay.
it's going a long way. The form's been out 3 years now, so now it's going through its cycle. So it's starting to we're starting to extrapolate more information now, more detailed information.
Sure, sure. Well, that's good to know. I just thought I should know the answer to this, but I just thought of this. So let's say somebody has their first kid, they outgrow their car seat, but then they have another kid.
Sure.
Can that kid use the same car seat, or should you get a new one each
So
time?
they all have expiration dates.
Okay.
And depending on the manufacturer and the model, the newer seats that are out now will state right on the bottom, on somewhere, do not use this seat after X amount of years. So every seat by law has to have the label on it. The label has to tell us the manufacturer, the model name, the model number, and when it was manufactured.
Okay.
So that's a minimum, and that's all required by law. So if now some of the labels add do not use, do not use after this date on that same label.
Okay.
Some it's in the plastic itself, and it'll say do not use after 7 years of manufacture date.
Okay.
Now, what we're finding is, especially with a lot of the online shopping and the larger warehouses, that sometimes a seat may sit in a warehouse for a year or 2 or 3.
Sure.
So it's always good to check with your manufacturer, because some of the manufacturers are now revising their guidelines and saying that instead of being X amount of years from the date of manufacture, it's X amount of years from the date of purchase.
Okay.
And the expiration date is there for a reason. The reason is the fact that, like in New England, right, in the wintertime, you can have 0 degrees at night, and then you heat your car up and you drive to work, and it's 70 degrees inside your car. And then it sits in a parking lot with sun beating down on it and could be hot or cold or anything in between. And then you do the same thing at night. So that temperature changes, the weather, everything can affect the plastic, can affect the harness system. So that's why, everybody's like, well, a lot of people ask, well, what really goes wrong with a seat, that it has an expiration date. So
That's good to know, because I would think even just wear and tear. I mean, at least with the seats you can take in and out, you're moving those all
Yeah,
around all the time. They can
exactly.
bang into
Yeah,
things, and then
sure.
even just kids banging on them,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff.
And you take it
So
out and you put it into the stroller, and then you
right.
bring the stroller and you go shopping at the mall, and you're going around, and not that you crash into something, but you hit in a wall or something, and then you take
Right.
it out and put it on the floor, and
Yep.
yep, it gets a lot of use and abuse sometimes.
Yeah.
So
So
we've
that's
seen some
helpful.
in some funny
Oh, I bet.
conditions. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you take volunteers?
sure, yep, yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
Okay.
We did a class at the firehouse 2 years ago, and we got a couple more technicians in town. So right now there's 2 over at the PD, and there's myself at fire, and then we're a very unique program in Londonderry. Is that we are a collaboration of police, fire, and then our citizen volunteers. We have a good number of. They could be nurses. They could just be caring people who want to help out and make sure that kids are safe. And it's good to have, because sometimes when you're working with a child or working with a parent, sometimes you just need that different set of eyes, and maybe your mom, who's one of our volunteers, can explain it a little different than a police officer or a firefighter can. Maybe we're just not understanding what the parent's asking, or how they're asking it, what they're really trying to get for an answer. And sometimes it just takes one of our mom volunteers to say, no, this is what they're trying to, this is what they're asking, and explain it. So it works out really well in Londonderry.
So if someone wanted to get involved, they could just contact the information that we'll have included.
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep.
Moving a little bit away from cars, I don't know if you have
Sure.
expertise in this or can answer, but I've been wondering about airplane travel. Why do they not require car seats, but you have to in a car?
The difficulty that we have is that in an airplane, you only have a lap-only belt,
Okay.
where in a car, you have lap shoulder belts, right? So
Right.
I think Ford Explorer was the last one to have a lap-only belt in the center position, and that was like 2015 or
Oh,
16,
okay.
something like that. So none of the cars coming out now have lap-only belts. And the lap and shoulder combination restrains the car seat in a certain way. And
Okay.
on the airplanes, it's only a lap-only belt. So
Okay.
that's why it's a little different. But there are seats that are airplane certified, and it'll say right on the side, aircraft approved or aircraft certified by the FAA. A lot of parents just don't because they don't want to spend the money for the extra ticket,
Right.
and they'll hold the child as opposed to putting them into a car seat.
Yeah.
Or they don't want the car seat to get damaged, right? So there's all different ways, but yeah, there are seats that can go in it. You can take a convertible seat and make it forward facing on an airplane with the lap only belt. So yeah, we're getting there. We're doing more and more models are available that are aircraft certified. So
Okay.
yep,
So there's no specific reasoning why FAA or airlines haven't required that
no,
for
no,
kids or any.
no.
Okay.
Usually price is what the because
Sure.
if you require it, then the caregiver has to
Right.
buy a
Yeah.
ticket for that seat.
Yeah, because
Yep,
I've been grappling with that. I know, like, under two, you can have them on your lap, but I'm like,
yep,
how safe is that if you
right.
have turbulence or
Yep,
something? But
yep,
then the, and not that there's a cost on kids' safety, I don't want, but
yep,
it's
right.
like, then if not, you have to pay for the $400, $500 ticket for this
Exactly,
baby,
right. Yeah,
So
right.
it's
Yeah,
kind of a dilemma to
yeah,
put
yeah.
parents
And it's
in,
the
but
same thing with car seats, right? I mean, so, is there, people say, well, what's the best car seat? And our answer as technicians is the best one is the one that fits your child. You can install properly, right, and easily. But the $400 car seat and $100 car seat are all tested to the same national standards. They may have some features that make things easier. It's the difference between a Cadillac and a Chevrolet, right? Maybe you have a three-way adjustable seat in a Cadillac, and you only have a one-way in a Chevrolet. But so different things like that. So
and do you have any fundraisers or maybe special events that you do throughout the year that you would want to promote?
we have our Seat Check Saturday, which will be in September. But people do not have to wait for that if they're having their child sooner. Last year, we collaborated with the Londonderry Women's Club, and it worked out awesome. It was a great event. They had some volunteers that could help us out. Because what happens at those larger events, especially if we start getting busy, is we have to take technicians from inspecting seats and make them registration or directing traffic or something. And the women's club came in with a whole slew of volunteers. Everybody was assigned a task. They all did it. It was fantastic. They took care of stuffing giveaway bags and introducing themselves to the caregiver as they arrived, making sure that they filled out the proper part of the form that we needed done. So when a technician was available, we just went right and inspected car seats.
Oh, that's great.
So if you only have 6 or 7 techs, and if 2 or 3 of them have to do, you know, reception area and making sure that the forms are done and everything, those are the techs that aren't doing what they're there for. So
Uh-huh. Yeah. And is there anything we haven't covered that you'd
the
like to make sure?
laws.
Okay.
How about car seat laws?
There you
So
go.
as of January 1st of this past year, 2024, New Hampshire now requires that a child has to be rear facing up until the age of 2. There are some exceptions, but those are very few and far between. That is to make sure that the child rides. That's as safe as we can ride, rear facing at any time. We recommend, an American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that we keep that same child rear facing even longer. So we have like a converter. So when we did your seat, we did the bucket, right, or the
Uh-huh.
infant only, or the rear facing only. It has all different names, right? So those right now, the highest those go to would be like 35 pounds and 32 inches in height.
Hmm.
So now we have convertible seats. So a convertible seat is that next stage. and that can go in rear facing and then can convert to a forward facing seat. So those on the market now are 40 pounds and anywhere between 35 and 39 inches, 42 inches, something like that. So that allows us to keep that child rear facing longer.
Oh,
There are 50-pound seats on the market now. There's two, but we're expecting within the next year that there will be even more models that'll go to rear facing up until 50 pounds.
okay.
The child's safer rear facing. We know that. In Europe, their children travel rear facing at 4 and sometimes 5 years old because they know that it's safer, and that's what we're trying to bring here. So in the state of New Hampshire, they have to, by law, stay rear facing at least until 2. But our best practice or our best guideline is that we keep them rear facing as long as we can. What we hear from the parents or the caregiver is that, well, their feet hit the back of the vehicle seat. Okay, as long as they're within the height and the weight limits, we're good. Their feet hit, so either they do crisscross applesauce, right, or their feet are hitting a little bit. In a case of a crash, again, I always tell the parent, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about that person that runs the stop sign or the red light or whatever. They're going to be safer rear facing because their internal organs and whatnot will be protected by their skeleton. Maybe they get a broken foot because their foot was up against it. It's usually not a life-threatening injury. But if they were forward-facing at such a young age, any of their internal injuries could be. So we want to keep them by law up until 2, but as long as we can. And then we go into that forward-facing seat. Now, whether it be a convertible that was rear-facing, and then you have to make changes, and that's what a lot of parents don't know, is that there are changes that have to be made if you're going to take that rear-facing convertible seat and make it a forward-facing convertible seat.
Okay.
So a lot of times that's like one of the questions that we get is, we moved, Johnny from rear-facing to forward-facing, but, he doesn't look comfortable, or it just doesn't look right. And that's usually because they didn't make the changes that are necessary, right? So in their owner's manual will say, but we want to keep them in a 5-point harness as long as possible. There are 65-pound 5-point harness on the market now.
Okay.
We used to have some 80s, but we don't have that anymore. Now, to give you an idea, when I became a tech 24 years ago, a convertible seat, while you couldn't find a standard, regular, off-the-shelf 5-point harness seat that went above 40 pounds. If it did, it was most likely a medically necessary seat.
Okay.
If a child, needed that extra support for whatever reason, and they were $1,000.
Oh, gosh.
So now we can go to 65 pounds with a 5-point harness and protect the child as, that's as like, next to being rear facing, that's as safe as we can make that child. And then when they outgrow that, they can go into the booster seat.
Okay.
And we recommend that they stay in the booster seat as long as possible. That's the forgotten child. You get children that get abdominal injuries because they don't go into that booster seat and they're sitting with the lap and shoulder belt on. That lap and shoulder belt is designed for a male adult. We need that child to fit into that. So unless the shoulder belt fits into the center of their shoulder, the strongest parts of their shoulder, they have a little tickle spot, and the lap belt is on their hip, not on their belly, they're not going to be safe. So that's why the booster seat's important. That's that forgotten child, because parents think they're big boys and girls now, they're kids, right? Which they are compared to them being, an infant or, in first grade or whatever. But they're not big, they're not adults, and they don't fit into that seatbelt system. We have, our ambulances are $300,000-$400,000, and we have an awful lot of equipment on them. But we don't have MRIs or X-rays to know whether or not they have any internal injuries.
Okay.
So, you take a child and send them into Boston after a crash because you see that there's markings, like that seatbelt marking on their belly. Do they have internal injuries? We don't know. But if we take that child and send them to Boston or up to Dartmouth, up in Lebanon, because we want to make sure that the child gets the best care possible and mom or dad aren't being transported, it's a tough decision that our paramedics make.
Yeah.
Number one, we don't like to separate mom and baby, so we are, right? And now, we're putting, how many miles, 50 miles, 60
Yeah.
miles between the two. It's the forgotten child because they think that they're old enough, they think that they're big enough. I did a talk at the Matthew Thornton PTA years ago, and I made a comment that I asked a question as to how many children, how many parents still had their children in some type of a child restraint, meaning either a convertible seat or a forward facing seat and a harness or even a booster seat. And you could tell by the look in the eye, the look at the eyes in the parents. And I made a statement that without the exception of maybe a dozen kids in that entire school, every child in that school should be in some type of restraint. And I got looks like I didn't know what I was talking about, but they're fifth graders. I mean, they
Yeah.
could still be in that booster seat, and that booster seat is doing nothing but just trying to protect them.
Yeah.
The kids get fidgety, right? So maybe when they sit upright and mom does the test, does the lap and shoulder belt fit properly? But if they're fidgety while the ride is happening and they're out of position and say that shoulder belt is over on the side or even worse that it's up on the neck. I had a fellow instructor one day in a class said that if you knew that you were going to get into a crash 30 seconds from now, pretend that 30 seconds is going to happen 30 seconds from now and make
Yeah.
sure that the child's safe.
Yeah.
You don't know. People say to me,
Right.
why do you do it? I said, I do it because the kids don't know better,
Right.
and we're just trying to help the parents make the kids safe.
So, how can parents know when to go to that next step? So, when to go from rear facing to front facing and then to the booster seat?
Yep,
Because you can't necessarily go by age or like size, because with their legs hitting, even you said that's
right.
not an issue. So,
Right.
how do they know when to do that?
Yep. So there's literature that we give out whenever we do inspections. So we have, it's called the 4 stages of car seat safety. So stage 1 is rear facing, stage 2 is forward facing with the harness, stage 3 is the booster seat, and then stage 4 is when they can go into the lap and shoulder belt. They can go on nhtsa.gov, so www.nhtsa.gov, and there's all sorts of, they're all color coded. Each stage has its own color, and there's a 4 stage chart that they can look at for more information. Earlier we gave you the New Hampshire website. They can go on that. There's all sorts of information. We now have it in multiple languages, not just in English. We're trying to adapt all of the literature, and NHTSA as well is trying to adapt all the literature to many different languages. So, and that's one of the things. Concord has very varied ethnicities. In some of their inspections, friends of mine run the program, and sometimes they need interpreters to be there when they do it, so they can make sure that the parents are understanding. There was a study done years ago that said that the owner's manual of a car seat manual, the owner's manual of the car seat, is written to a 12th grade reading level, but 70 something percent of the adults in the United States can only read to a 10th grade reading level. So, although the parents were reading the manual, they weren't understanding it.
Okay.
So, the car seat manufacturers have adapted their manuals. There are more pictures. There's more diagrams on the side of the seat itself to try to help the parents. Everything's color coded. So, depending on the model seat, if it's instructions for rear facing, everything's in blue or it's in red. And then everything for forward facing is in a different color. And then if it turns into a booster seat, all the instructions for booster seat mode are in a third color. So you're not getting confused with, you look on the side and you see 3 different sets of instructions. What am I doing? Clearly says blue, rear facing, red, whatever the color is. So
Oh,
they're trying to adapt their owner's manuals, the instructions to that as well.
okay. That's
And of course, if they have any question at all, they can always contact our program
okay.
via email or leave a voicemail. We try. Sometimes we have some technical issues with our voicemail, but we will get back to everybody. And some people just want to ask a question and they're happy with the answer,
Okay.
and they move on. And some say, well, you know what, I just don't get it, or I'm not understanding it, and we'll make an appointment and hopefully help them out. So.
Yeah, and that's why it's just one of the many reasons it's a great service, because I know for me, I'm not a manual person. I look at those and it does not
No,
absorb. So having a real life person to show you and tell you is
yeah.
much better for me, and I hope probably a lot of other
And
people
we try
too.
not to
So
rush. And again, that's why we do that hour. Sometimes we're done before an hour, and sometimes we're not done
yeah,
in an hour. But our goal is that we educate, we don't install.
yeah,
So we go through it, we show them how it goes in, then we take it out and let the parent or the caregiver or the grandparent put it in themselves, so they understand what we just went through and how we do it. So,
and which nonprofit would do you think we should have next as a guest?
ooh, wow. Have you done the alert team? They're a
I have
great
not, but
group.
they're on my list because I know
There you
Al
go.
Sipek would love to
Oh, he
to
would.
do that.
They
So
just do such fantastic work.
yeah.
Strictly Londonderry or
Oh no, it can be anywhere because some
Sunshine Soup Kitchen in Derry.
organizations have a look. Oh, they'd be good too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They have a great program. There's I can get you the contact info. So out of St. Jude, they do a community meal
Okay.
once a month on a Sunday,
Yeah.
but they work with 4 other churches.
Oh, nice.
So each Sunday there's a free community meal. So I can get you some info there as
Sure,
well.
that'd
But
be great.
yeah,
Yeah, because
awesome.
we like to
And would love to
feature.
come back and talk. And oh, if you don't mind, one thing. So we talked about the car seat laws.
Yes.
So in New Hampshire, it's up until 2, or they have to be in a car seat or some type of a child restraint until they're 7 or 57 inches. But if you travel to a different state, you are obliged by their laws. So there's another website out. It's called hold on, Governor's Safety Highway Administration. So www.gsha.gov or org. And when you click on that, it shows you a picture of the United States, all the states. Whichever state you're going to travel in, you can click on the state, and it shows you what the law is. And it also has a spot when you click on it that you can print out the law. For instance, our 2 neighboring states, Vermont and Maine, they also require that a child be at least 2, stay rear facing at least until 2. But they also say that if a child is forward facing, that they have to be in a 5-point harness up until so many pounds or so many inches. Then they say you have to be in a booster seat or some type of a child restraint up until so many pounds or so many years of age. So, and I don't want to quote it because I always
Sure.
get it wrong when I try to think between. It's just a little difference between the two, but that gsha.org has all of the states throughout the entire country, and like I said, you can print it out. It's right. You click on it, and there's a little thing if you need to. But you are obliged by the law in the state in which you are traveling in. So you can't take your child up to Maine because you want to go up to Algonquin Beach for the day, and think because it's a beautiful day, I'm going to make her, I'm going to make him or her forward facing so they can, see the beautiful countryside and the water when they're only a year and a half, or, we'll just put them in their booster seat because I don't want to have to worry about their harness and everything so they can look out the window. And I don't know this for a fact, I've just heard it from fellow instructors, is zero tolerance.
Okay.
You can't say, well, I'm just visiting for an hour, up from New Hampshire or whatever. There's zero tolerance. They're pretty strict
That's
on
good
it.
to know because we go to Maine fairly often to visit grandparents,
Sure.
and I had no idea. I mean, we've been still following within the
Yeah, well,
laws,
he's
but
small enough still
yeah, but
but
still good to know
yeah,
for future and for other people to know, especially
sure.
with the summer travel season going on.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yep.
yeah. And then the final question is, what is the kindest thing you've ever witnessed or been a part of? And I know it's tough, and it's sometimes hard to pick one specific thing, so you can just whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That's a good one. I like that one. I'm not going to tear up doing it too. I was contacted by a family in Nashua who had twins with special needs. Very in depth special needs, medical problems. And I contacted a friend of mine, and we went, and it was it was awesome to be able to help him out. And Cindy, sorry,
No, you're fine.
Cindy, who's my friend who came down, was like, I can't believe what we just did,
Oh,
and
wow.
how happy they were to make sure that their kids were safe. We're talking about a family who did CPR on one of their children on the side of the highway because on the way home, one of their they one of their daughters had breathing problems and ended up going into
Oh, gosh.
breathing, stop breathing, and did CPR on the side of the road. But the hugs that we got from them for helping. So
Oh, wow. That's
yeah,
amazing. Thank
sorry.
you for. No, no, no. I understand. And thank you for sharing that because that's why I wanted to start this podcast because there's so much good and
There is,
kindness that
yeah,
goes on
yep.
in the world, and
And there's too
people
much
don't
bad, and we
hear
need the
about
good.
it.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
So thank you for
yep.
sharing
My
that.
wife's aunt wanted in Massachusetts wanted to start a paper, and she wanted to call it the Good News.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
her friends told her that no one would buy it because people just wanted to see the bad things as what's going on, and she never
Yeah.
did. But
Yeah,
so
that's too
this is
bad.
awesome. This is
Cause
great.
yeah,
Keep it up.
cause well, thank you, thank you.
Would be
Hopefully,
more than happy to come back and talk about it. And if people
yeah,
have questions, and they can always contact our program. Are you going to put it
definitely.
on somewhere, all the info, or do you want me to go
Yeah,
through
so
it?
I can put it in the description, but then as you're talking about it on the YouTube version, I'll put it like up on the screen so they
Awesome.
can have a
Excellent.
visual of
Yep,
it as
cool.
well. So,
Awesome.
but thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here and
Appreciate it. This is
sharing the
awesome. And
information with
congratulations to
everybody.
you and your new child and
Thank you.
adding to the
Yes.
family. That's awesome.
Yes,
Yep.
definitely.
Good.
Thank you so
We're glad we
much.
could
And
help you out.
hopefully, people will reach out. And if you're not in New Hampshire, reach out to your local town and
Yep.
check out that website we shared with you. And that
Yep.
way, you
Safe.
can make
Yep.
sure
Safe
you're.
Kids USA, and you can find an inspection station in all 50 states, Puerto Rico.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it.
I hope that you enjoyed today's episode and learning more about car seat safety. Thank you so much to Vinny for taking time to teach us about this important issue. He's such a kind and caring person who you can see really cares about people in the community and making sure that children are safe. I will be sure to leave all of the information that we mentioned for you in the description. I hope that you will look into finding a certified car seat technician in your area in order to get your car seat checked. Be sure to follow Dose of Good Podcast on Instagram and Facebook for all the latest information about the podcast. I would also greatly appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review where you listen to podcasts, whether that be Spotify or Apple, and let me know what you think of the podcast. By leaving a rating and review, we can get it distributed more and hopefully find the people who would be looking for this type of show so that we can get more listeners, more viewers, and just help the podcast to grow, to share a dose of good with many more people. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the podcast. I hope that it has been informative for you as well as maybe entertaining, heartwarming, and I will continue to share these positive stories with you of wonderful people doing amazing things to make the world a better place. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.